Good afternoon, Bobby. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jane. Feeling a bit homesick, but missing you as well. Other
Well,
than that, I'm doing really great, though. Thank you, love.
and you've been through all this trouble in New York.
Yeah, if you've heard, we've had a bit of bad weather out here.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
But you're good?
Thankfully, yes. A lot of people
Thankfully.
didn't fare as well, so I'm very grateful, very aware of how lucky I am, actually.
All right. So, yeah, luck. We need to talk about luck one day. But this week, we're going to be talking about professionalism and how professionalism, true professionalism, can really impact your income as a trainer or Group X instructor. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, and a lot of people hear about professionalism, and they think, that's that cheesy stuff that management tells me that you have to show up on time and you have to follow through on your promises and you have to educate yourself. And yeah, I've heard it before. That is not what professionalism is. That's just basic common sense. That's the bare minimum required
Yeah.
not to be sacked or not to become irrelevant overnight. If it even takes you that long. We talk about the storm out here, right? And so many of my clients were impacted horrifically. Like, thank God a lot of clients live in the city because their homes outside the city that they have had in their family for a long, long time were completely annihilated. There's no rebuilding it. The foundations are destroyed. And this is where professionalism comes in. Professionalism implies fiduciary responsibility. It implies that your clients are not simply involved in a monetary exchange of your knowledge and skills for their money to facilitate a result. They're under the guidance, they're under the protection, and they're under the care of a true professional. I mean, think about any time where anyone seeks out a professional, not just basically a transaction, but a real professional. When do you seek a solicitor? When do you seek an accountant? Usually, it's when you have a strong need that by yourself, if you try to handle it, you'd get yourself in trouble. So your solicitor isn't someone who just provides you with legal services. They're a trusted member of your family, of your inner circle. They're someone who you depend on to protect your best interests as if your best interest were their own. Because if they do not have an equal level of commitment that you would have to your own affairs, it can get you in quite a lot of bit of trouble, can't it?
Absolutely.
When we talk about professionalism, and if you know me and you've heard me speak on anything, you know I hate cheesy little stories. But there's one cheesy story that really is relevant here.
Really?
It's of Joe Girard. Now, this is a very quote-unquote American type story. And that's my disclaimer before I get into this. But Joe Girard, of all things, sold used cars. Now, Joe Girard was in the Guinness Book of World Records for many years of being the top performing car salesperson in the world. Now, you have to ask yourself, someone who sells something so tangible as an automobile, I mean, you can get that anywhere. It's not exactly unique, and he wasn't exactly selling a Bentley, was he? It wasn't a high-end level product. It was just run-of-the-mill used cars. How does an individual that sells something so commoditized as a used car become the top financial performing car salesperson in the world back in his heyday? And this is how he did it, Jane. He believed that his job was not to sell a vehicle. And by his own admission, he said what really helped him was he wasn't that great of a salesperson.
Right.
He didn't the ability to sometimes ask the right questions. He didn't have the ability to work out the finances that's probably a good thing for all parties involved, as cleverly as his coworkers, and he was really a horrible closer. He didn't have the ability to close the sale with such extraordinary precision and skill as other salespeople.
Right.
Now, we hate people who are really good at closing the sale because we start to think they're a bit cheeky. As a matter of fact, the more consultative and the less skilled you are as a traditional salesperson, the less you have what's called the gift of the gab, probably the better you'll do.
Right.
Joe Girard's day, it was an essential prerequisite that he lacked. So he had to ask himself a couple of questions, and one of the questions was, what industry can I get into if I have to leave what I'm doing because I might not last? But then he asked himself a better question. And if you want a better answer, it makes sense. It's in direct correspondence with your ability to ask deeper, more profound, and essentially better questions. And the great question he asked himself was, being that I'm not as good in certain critical areas as my peers in this industry, what one skill set or what one attribute could I develop that would level the playing field and at least get me up to par with some of the other people I work with? And what he came up with is whenever I close a sale, I will do so much more after the sale than anybody else in my industry even considers. Because he took a look at where does my industry fail. Now, if you've ever bought a used car, and it's not a high-end automobile, what you've noticed, the vast majority, if not all of us, is they will promise you anything, and they love you up until the point that you sign your financing.
Yeah.
After that, try coming back with a problem, and the salesperson will brush you off to the service department or the mechanics department as fast as possible because they're on to the next and they do not want to deal with you. And what that does is when you're buying a high-ticket item, and used cars might be a commoditized item, but it's a high-ticket item, you're spending thousands and thousands, in some cases tens of thousands of pounds, on a purchase. So if that goes wrong, you're out a lot of money. And you're out the freedom to use that money, a substantial amount of money, for any other type of purchase. So trust becomes an essential prerequisite. And Joe Girard said to himself, after somebody buys, I'm going to take the mindset that the sale begins when the customer says yes. See, there's an old adage in selling that the sale begins when the customer says no, because that's when you really roll up your sleeves and never accept no for an answer. And, you know, winners are closing. You've got to ask for the sale 6 times.
Yeah.
You know, truth, when the person says no. He said, no, it begins when the person said yes. Because after they walk out of here, I'm going to keep in touch with them. I'm going to follow up with them on how much they're enjoying the vehicle. I'm going to get to know them. When he would, in the sales transaction, when you fill out the agreement for the paperwork, you have to put your date of birth. I'm going to start sending things like happy birthday cards to people. I'm going to start, you know, if I know what holiday they celebrate, especially if it's a national holiday, not a religious holiday, and everyone's celebrating it, kind of like New Year's, I'm going to send out a Happy New Year's present, something very, very small, but when they open it, it's cute. It makes them think of me. And what this did is it built so much trust because people said to themselves, you know what, I'm going to pay the same amount of money for a comparable automobile anyway. The safest decision is to do business with Joe because Joe's a household name. So Joe got more repeat business than anybody else, and Joe got more referrals than anybody else because people like, you have to go to my car sales guy. You wouldn't believe the experience you have, because normally going to buy a car, because of the reputation that industry has, is about exciting as going to see your dentist. As a matter of fact, going to see your dentist is probably much less painful than going to buy a new vehicle. See, Joe Girard gets it.
So how does that relate to us? So you're saying it's about the follow-up?
You know what? There's another adage that says the fortune's in the follow-up. Nothing could be more spot on, Jane, and nothing could be more true. Professionalism is not about doing what's expected. Professionalism is about meeting the most unexpressed needs of the customer. Now, people who have worked in a health club environment, who have a job description and a role set out for them, sometimes don't get this to degree that someone who is an independent or someone who's opened up their own studio, they get this.
Yeah.
They understand that customer loyalty is the difference. It's the key to the lock on your future, because attrition, and what I mean by attrition is the amount of business you lose, is measured monthly, but compounds annually. And let me explain what I mean by this. Let's say you've got 10 people that pay for your classes. And out of those 10 people in a class, you lose one every single month. Well, you might say, wow, that's pretty good. I keep 90%. But hold on, that one every single month compounds to 12 out of the year.
Yeah,
So
or -2.
What'd you say?
I said, or -2 even.
Yeah, 1 or -2, which is more realistic. But let's just say it's 1. You're losing one person per month. And let's say that one person, their weekly dues for classes, let's say it's £15 per class. Let's round that up to 50. So that's £50 per week. Well, that's £200 per month, right? Now multiply that by 10 months out of the year. Let's say they don't train with you every single month. That's £2,000.
Mm-hmm.
Even more interesting is if you factored in how much it cost you in your marketing efforts to go out and find and recruit, attract, bring in, and indoctrinate. What I mean by indoctrinate is get somebody taking classes and enjoying your culture to the point where they're not curious, they're serious about being one of your clients, and they're going to stay for a much greater sales cycle. You'll find it costs you about 50 quid, anywhere from 30 to 50 quid to even attract new business. So when you lose just one person, you're talking about thousands of pounds per year. Let's get back to car analogy. That could be a car payment, isn't it? So if you don't get a handle on that, and if you don't do little tiny things beyond just providing a great class, because a lot of people think, you know what, if I just educate myself and I provide the very best class, and my classes are not only exciting and they're not only productive, but they're safe, people will come back.
Yeah, you're so right.
Hold on. No, they won't, because they think everybody does that. That's like going to a doctor and going, well, if they get me better and they don't kill me in the process, that makes them stand out. I expect they're going to get me better and not do anything that's going to harm me seriously. So nobody comes to your class going, you know what, I might blow an ACL today. They kind of...
It's the opposite, actually, Bobby, because I get a lot of people who are new to class and they come and say, oh, the girl that used to teach me said this. And I think that's ridiculous. I don't say it often, but I think that's ridiculous. But she thinks that what this girl said is first class, 100% top notch. So the client, you're right, the client does perceive that everyone and everything that we're saying is right. It's the things that we do that they don't expect, I think.
You see, you got to take a look at, why does that happen? Why does everybody assume that their trainer or their Group X instructor is the best? It's because people are not logical. They do not have the exercise science background to discern someone who really knows their stuff from someone who doesn't. So they make decisions emotionally. And because they make decisions emotionally, trust becomes the common denominator.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Requisite for your business, and trust is a product of understanding. You cannot trust someone who you feel does not understand you, and you cannot believe that someone understands you if they have not shown an investment in you beyond the transaction, an investment that transcends into who you are as a human being.
Yeah, so brilliant.
Highly competent, you're highly conscientious, you're safe, and on top of that, you meet even the most unexpressed needs of your clientele.
Yeah, I love it.
Especially in an industry where we have some of the very best minds, the most empathetic, loving people working alongside some of the most useless, egotistical.
Don't get me started.
We're not going to talk about that right now. What I'm saying is, if you've got everything, you check all the boxes, and then you're willing to do more than you're paid for beyond that, you'll separate yourself from the vast majority who really are not that, I guess, impressive in the way that they approach their training sessions. Yeah. Because once that person leaves, just like the car salesperson, out of sight, out of mind. good litmus test is, what do you know about the people in your classes outside of the facility?
No, I think you'll find the average group exercise instructor is pretty hot on this. But actually, as you're saying it, I think a lot of people should be saying, yeah, that's a skill I have, and I don't even recognise it as professionalism.
It's exactly professionalism, because I could look at a session, and by who's doing most of the talking, I could tell what type of a relationship that individual has. And by talking, I'm not referring to instruction. If you look at most people, now this doesn't live in a group X class. You don't have the ability to stand up in front of the room and talk about what you did over the weekend. Your career would be over that day. Personal trainers, as you listen to them in the health clubs, they're talking about themselves. They're talking about their interests, their weekend, their activities, and that leaves very little time to engage their client. Right now, I know who's lost their homes. I know whose cat is ill at the moment. I know who's going away for the holidays. I know where they're going. I know who's had surgery because of a pre-existing injury. I know who's having an opening at their art gallery. I know this about my clientele, because they are not a customer. They're not a member. Those are transactional definitions.
Yeah.
I only have clients. And whether you have a room of one person in front of you or 20 people in front of you, they are your clientele, because they are under your care, your guidance, and your protection.
Brilliant.
That's the difference.
Love it, love it, love it. Oh, thank you for that. That was fab.
Well, thank you, Jane.
We love you, Bobby. And we will see you next week.
See ya. Bye, guys.
Bye.